In the last videos, I covered the essential parts of making anime edits in Davinci Resolve, such as using flow frames, time remapping, pacing, and transitions. But let's be honest, there's a lot more that goes into anime editing than just that. I'll be going super in-depth on teaching the techniques and effects that I use in every edit, and finally explaining the Fusion page so you'll no longer be confused. My name is CloutVFX, lock in, and welcome to AMV Basics Part 3. So my goal for you after watching this video is to no longer think that the Fusion page is scary. So I invite you guys to follow me as I show the techniques and tricks that I used to turn this anime clip into a polished masterpiece like so. All these techniques that I used for this one comp is pretty much going to be used in every single clip for an anime edit. So the tricks that I show you here for this one clip can be applied to your whole edit for all of your clips. So let's get into it. If you guys would like to follow along, I have everything inside of the Discord server. And also if you're missing some plugins and effects, make sure to download the Clout editing pack. It's completely free. All right, back into the edit. So if you watched part 1, you should know how time remap works. This is the graph that I used. It's a pretty general graph. Make sure to hold Alt and drag so everything stays in place. And pretty much I want to get the momentum of this hand. Like I want the motion to be slower as it gets closer to the chest. So that's why I picked a graph like this. And you might notice that the interpolation mode is on blend instead of flow. Now, this will be changed towards the end. While I'm making the edit, I have everything on lower settings so I don't lag. This allows me to see the edit while I'm making it. And towards the end, we're going to switch everything to flow and turn up our quality. That way everything just comes together like that and there's no extra struggle or time wasted waiting for things to load. All right, let's get this party started. Let me make this a little bit smaller so you guys see what I can do. Get a background node and connect it to your media out node like so. Take your time stretcher, drag it to the white dot, and this will create a merge node. What I'm setting up is pretty much a vertical workflow. So all the composites and stuff will happen in this section, and then all the finishing touches, framers, and transitions will happen in this part of the node tree. I like setting up a nice structure. That way I can open up any project, look at the nodes, and be able to tell what's going on. So this is the first Fusion technique that I really want you guys to focus on, and it's called branching out. You'll be using this for almost every single composite. And branching out is pretty much when you take the white dot of a node and drag it out into another node. This will create a new arrow, allowing you to get a merge node and connect it back to your main tree like so. So pretty much what this is doing is taking the information that's coming from these nodes, branching it out so you can build an effect or whatever on its own separate, I guess, layer. I don't like using the word layer, but you could think of it as a layer, and merge it back onto this main branch. When I say main branch, I mean everything that's connected to this merge node going out to the media out node. So we're going to be utilizing the depth map. If you don't have the depth map, you can generate one using AI, or you can download Davinci Resolve Studio and it will give you that for free and it works beautifully. I also have a video on depth maps if you don't know which one to get, so check that out as well. If you don't have access to depth maps, there are a couple of options for you. BCC has one, and I'm pretty sure other plugins like Nano or AIs like I think Grok can even generate depth maps. So you're not going to be completely screwed if you don't have a depth map. If you're on the free version, you can just use other alternatives. So with this depth map, we're going to control the foreground and background elements to create a very nice custom looking effect that feels like it's part of the scene. A very common composite that people do are particles. So I'll be using YAAA quick particles. It's a very easy and quick way to make something pretty cool. So hopefully YouTube compression doesn't mess this up. I'm going to click on my viewer and press A. That will show the alpha channel just so you guys can easily see the particles. This is what it looks like. Let me press play, and yeah, it is a little bit laggy, but it is what it is. You get the gist of it. So I'm going to make a merge node and drag the YAAA composite particles onto there like that. And now we have particles on the scene, but they are on top of the hand and all that. So we're going to mask that out using the depth map. And in order to do that, we're going to segue into the next node that you really need to know when you're doing compositing, and that is the matte control. It's right here on the toolbar, or if you have the Nuke to Fusion plugin downloaded, you can just press A. So click on the Calvo composite particles, click on your matte control node, take your depth map and plug that into the gray input of matte control.
Hey guys, Future Clout here. I'm going to show you what matte control does before I do this little technique with it. Matte control is actually how you properly mask in Davinci Resolve, and it's extremely helpful, so keep watching. Okay, let's say I'm bringing a random image and I want to mask it out. Most people are going to get a polygon node, connect it to the blue input, and then like make some random mask and call it a day. Yes, it works. There's a better way to do this. Let me show the advantages of using matte control compared to doing the effect mask way right here. So take matte control, get a polygon node, and connect the polygon to the gray input right here, and then make your mask. So I'm going to just quickly mask around my face like this. Preview the matte control node, and pretty much it's going to be like transparent. If you want it to flip around, you can press the invert right here, or you could go to the matte control garbage matte settings and press invert. It's the same thing. So the advantage of doing this is so you can make corrections or changes before and after the mask. So let's say I wanted to put like EKLightWrap quick displace on this, and then I wanted to put glow after it, right? You know, and just for fun, like let's say I wanted some text too. Let's say I took this polygon mask, right, and I didn't even use matte control. If I put it back on the media into like this, like the old way, now everything that would be bigger than media into wouldn't be inside of the mask. So like the effect wouldn't be the same. So yes, please use matte control every single time you want to mask. Get in the habit of using it. It's extremely helpful. And again, it's key binded to A. All right, back to the tutorial.
This is going to make everything transparent at first. Right now, it's set to the channel of alpha. And since this whole image is solid, so like if I go onto our alpha layer right here, the whole image is white, that means nothing is going to show up when I go into the matte control. This is just, the alpha is showing like what's transparent and what isn't. And since the depth map is not transparent, obviously there's no like checkerboard, nothing's going to show on the matte control. So we need to switch it to a different channel. We can pick red, but usually I like sticking to luminance. That shows the black and white values. Whatever's more white is more solid, whatever's more black is transparent. So we're going to switch it over to luminance. And now if we zoom in here, based on this depth map, the particles will be in the background, but it looks like it's still on top of there. And I kind of have to zoom in a lot. So I'm going to make a brightness and contrast node and just turn up the brightness of our particles so we can see it better. And yeah, let's change this up so it looks like it's actually in the background. So I'm going to take my depth map and adjust my map levels so the character is almost completely white like that. There you go. That looks really good. Then I'm going to click on matte control and press 2 to preview it. And just as I expected, it is now completely behind the hand. And this looks pretty good.
Okay, next I'm going to add glow it to the particles just to give it a bit more pop. If I zoom in right here, you can see like the faint outline of the hand. So like right here, for example, if I go on to glow it, turn this threshold all the way down, and then play with the gain. And I gotta mess with the threshold first so it targets the brightness values of the particles. But now, see, as this threshold comes down, look, there's like more glow. So yeah, I'm gonna bring it all the way down, and I'm going to find a glow that just like looks good, you know? Go back to the merge. You don't really see it at first. This is where the brightness and contrast comes in. So I'm gonna go press G, brightness and contrast is key binded to G, hold shift and bring it down before the merge node. So then feel free to copy my settings. So let me put down the saturation to 0.14 and then our low value to 0.73, like that. All right, looking good. And I want to keyframe the blend right here. If you can't find blend, it's in the settings tab. All right, I'm gonna go to like towards like the middle end of the comp. I'm gonna just like bring it down just a little bit, maybe like 0.14. And then I'm gonna go completely to the end and turn it down. Not quite though. I think I want like 0.08, something like that. That way it's like always going down. I'm gonna bring this down like that. There you go. Now we have the nice little like fade in. And if I preview the merge node here, the brightness from the particles come out first because they're the brightest things in the scene. That's why the glow it was there, right? So like if I change this around, it can make it look nicer. and it will come in like that. Now Glow It is a little bit laggy on my computer, so just so I can lag less, I'm going to take blend and turn it to 0 towards the end. When things are at 0, they don't get processed. All right, so as for the compositing, we're pretty much done with all that. Now we're going to be segueing into the color corrections and framers and all that cool stuff. So the quickest, easiest way that I like to do color corrections are by either using plugins. And if you don't have plugins, try this out. This is called the dehaze node, all right? Now, depending on the scene, you might get some really cool effects with this. As you can see, if I change the dehaze strength, actually, let me make this bigger. As I change the dehaze strength, it changes the colors a little bit. You can change the shadow and highlight, and it's doing this based on some depth, but not like the depth map. It's like the brightness depth of the image. I'm not really sure. So that's what dehaze does. And then I like to combo that with something called Uni Finisher. Again, you do need universe plugins, extremely helpful. And this will turn on enhanced contrast, right? So it will make the image darker in certain areas. You can turn up the detail slider, and you can even put a filter on it. So you can have like the at water filter. And that's like a really quick and easy color correction. Now, if you don't want to use like presets and all that, I completely understand. Luckily, you're on Davinci Resolve and you literally have the whole color pick. Wait. Wait, you actually thought we were going to use the color page for color correction? Oh my god. No, I'm so happy you're watching my channel. We don't do that around here. we don't use the color page for color correction. All of those tools are actually in the Fusion page. The color correction node, right? People don't really look into it and like see what every single menu does. So let me just quickly overview that, because there's a lot you probably don't know. So this right here, the menu, there's levels, the histogram, there's suppression, right? What do those do, right? Let's see suppression, for example. Let's go to a good frame. Let's say I want to take out all the green from an image. I'm gonna just take this green, slide it down. Boom, now it's gray. Change the suppression angle, you know, so I can target the green a little bit more like that. Boom, now we have a desaturated image just like that, right? Or, right, there's this range tab right here. So I'm going back to the colors menu. There's a range tab. I can change the shadows. I could change the midtones. I could change the highlights, you know, and I could change the contrast, or pretty much this whole menu right here is all you'll pretty much need, right? And there you go. We have some like really, I mean, it is an intense color correction. If you want to change like the strength of the whole correction that you put on it, you change the blend setting, right? If you look at this tint mode, there's fast, full, and better. You can use that to your advantage. So this is what fast would look like compared to better. Obviously, it's better. Davinci Resolve has some crazy math science to make the color correction really, really work well. So really just give it a try. Open up the color corrector node and scan through all the menus. You're going to find some stuff that you never really seen before. So Contour is a plugin that pretty much condenses all the most used things you would do in the color page inside of one Fusion node. So all you have to do is just scroll down and change all the settings until you get to the end, and you'll pretty much have your color correction finished. So if I want to do my contrast, for example, I can turn on show contrast curve, make my corrections. So like the black point, white point, and I'll do all this stuff, just mess around with it. I could turn on enable splits, show the split curve, and do some split colors there, some changes, like literally just mess around with the sliders and you'll have a good CC. All right, take away the split curve, enable saturation, show sat curve, and yeah, these are pretty much the curves that you would see on the color page. So now we have split saturation, which is something that is a little bit like it would be harder to set up on the color page, so this makes it really easy. And then there's density. You could turn this up. This makes your colors more dense, pop out more instead of turning up the saturation on the regular color corrector node. So yeah, and then you have hue at the end. This is like a whole hue curve that you can change. Now, if you don't have Contour, if you can't download it for whatever reason, maybe you're on Mac, obviously there are the hue curves, the color curves, and also if you have the Clout Pack downloaded, you can just type in CC and have a bunch of different things you could use for CC. Ikawa Delicious CC is a good example of that. It shows the shadows, midtones, and highlights all at the same time. And before you even say it, oh, what about my LUTs? I went to your editing pack section on your server and downloaded all these LUTs right here, but I don't know how to use it. How do I do it? I got you. Hold on. So let's say you want to use a LUT for Davinci Resolve. That would be with the file LUT node. Basically, all you have to do is download your LUT. Oh, and if you don't even know what a LUT is, LUTs are pretty much color grading presets that you can import into DaVinci, and they work really, really well. Okay, so I downloaded some LUTs from the internet, and I have this whole folder here. If you get a file LUT node, connect it to your media like this, or you preview the node by pressing 2. You can either drag and drop your LUT into this LUT file section right here, change the pre-gain or the post-gain. If you want to change the overall strength of the LUT, you can go to blend, change it that way. Literally that easy. There are some other color correcting plugins like Genesis, for example. It always comes out like semi-transparent, so I got to add a background node after it. But yeah, Genesis is another example. But as you can see, the input space at the top says DaVinci Wide Gamut / DaVinci Intermediate. This is a color space. It might get a little bit confusing, but just copy the settings, you know what I mean? And like, yeah. So we're gonna get a node called Color Space Transform. You can type it in by clicking CST really fast. You want to get your input color space and input gamma. Keep that at default settings, rec sub 9, linear. Change output color space to DaVinci Wide Gamut, then output gamma to DaVinci Intermediate. This will put your whole image into the Davinci Resolve gamut, which is really good for color correction and all of that. And then you put your node in there. It has the input space, and then you merge it like that. And then once you go into the Genesis plugin, that's pretty much all you need to do. You can make whatever changes you want to make. And by the way, the Genesis plugin is pretty underrated. I think I might put it into the server, get a quick link for you guys to have that because it's a pretty good plugin. Another plugin you can use is Dehancer. Now, Dehancer did try to sponsor the video, but I'm not going to lie, Dehancer is a little bit broken. Let's say you make any changes on Dehancer. So let's say I change this to DaVinci Wide Gamut and all that. Change the profile, exposure, do whatever. And then I'm like, oh, I don't want this. Control Z, it just deletes the whole node. So Control Z doesn't really work well with Dehancer, and that's kind of annoying. So, okay, that was a color correcting tangent. I think I will make a separate video just on color correction that'll go more in depth about it, but I think I went in depth enough, right? This is AMV Basics Part 3. Lock in, all right? You're gonna be learning. So for the framers, I'm going to go a little bit like rapid fire here. The first thing I use is lens blur, and I just keyframe blur size. Keep it on default settings at 4. Go towards like the middle of the comp, make it 2, and then go towards the end, make it 0. That will give it that nice blur. What's the next effect? EK2 Shake Final. Now, my previous Shake video was made before Shake Final came out. This is Ikawa's new Shake node that completely recreates S Shake. So S_shake right here, right? From Sapphire. Now, again, you can just use regular Sapphire Shake, but for some reason, Sapphire has this weird issue on DaVinci where it doesn't show the right frame and it's buggy and it lags a little bit more. So Shake Final is like the less laggy, awesome version of that. So I did a low frequency shake. I kept everything on default settings except for Z amplitude a little bit, right? Turned down the frequency to about 0.354. And then I keyframe the amplitude from 0.24 all the way down to 0.05. I actually never really stop the shake. I just make it a really, really low value so you almost don't notice it. It just makes things look a little bit more seamless. So there you go. Now we have our shake. Oh, and I completely forgot the graph that I used for the shake. This is what it looks like. Just a regular S-curve, default settings, right? Shake shouldn't be super advanced when it comes to graphs, especially when it's like at the start of the comp. An S-shake graph can do. Oh, and I also forgot to show the lens blur graph. By the way, every single time I graph something in Davinci Resolve, it actually automatically goes into a S-shaped graph like so. If I keyframe at the start here and then keyframe at the end, look at that. It automatically makes an S-curve. If it doesn't do that for you, that's because when you watched AMV Basics Part 1, you didn't copy my darn settings, right? So again, you have to copy my settings when you do this. I'm telling you guys, I'm trying to put you on ball. Go up to Fusion settings, go down to splines, and then turn on auto smooth splines right here. It's off by default. Don't know why. So this will make every single spline automatically an S-curve. And if you want it to be linear, all you have to do is press Shift and L. I'm pretty sure most editors out there don't want linear lines. They're usually always doing the easing. So just save the extra click, turn on auto smooth, and there you go. It'll save you about like 2 clicks, but hey, it is what it is, bro. You're trying to save up all of our time here. All right, then I added a brightness and contrast node and changed the threshold from high
to low like that. If you saw AMV Basics Part 2, this is pretty much the brightness and contrast transition. And then I wanted to add like a framer to that. So I added Sapphire VHS Damage. This is the newest Sapphire node from Sapphire 2026. So if you don't have it, get an update. So go to settings, the blend is on 0. And then towards the end, it goes up to 1. So that's the little VHS effect right there. Gives us those flickers, some nice looking framers, right? And then transform node, keyframe size, go towards the end, zoom in just a teensy little bit. And then I get another transform node and I make it slide up slightly like that using the center Y right there. And since I'm sliding up, I gotta put some directional blur on it. So I just turned up length, that, and then our finishing touches. Literally, that's like, we're almost done here, guys. So the finishing touches, right? And again, I put this on every comp. Posterize time. This is new Davinci Resolve tech, all right? Take out your notebooks, write this down. Every single time you do something inside of one Fusion comp, you can put a posterize time node at the end of it and change the FPS to whatever you want. As long as you do this inside of one Fusion comp and you don't do it on an adjustment clip or whatever, this technique will work. That means you can just change the FPS throughout your whole edit. Well, you can't change it over the maximum FPS, which timeline FPS, which usually is 4, but hey, that's really, really cool. So I like putting posterize time at the end and turning down the frame rate based on literally just what looks good. So I landed on a frame rate of 20.4, and that made all the frames kind of last a pretty nice duration. It looks nice. And then I got an unsharp mask, kept that on default settings. That just makes things a little bit sharper. And then a grain node. And that's it. That's how I made an amazing looking comp like so. All right, so we have a nice and finished comp like this. What next, right? Well, remember at the start of the video where I said, hey, we're going to turn everything on low settings, and then towards the end, we're going to turn them back up. This is where that part comes in. So we're going to go all the way back up to our time stretcher node right here, and it's on blend. We're going to change that to flow, clamp edges, click all these checkboxes. Then we're going to add an optical flow node right before it. And now it's super slow motion. And now my camera's lagging. So, you know, Davinci Resolve. All right, now we have that super smooth Twixtor movement. And okay, now if we go to the edit page and right click on our timeline settings, this is where you can change your timeline from 1080p to 4K. And as long as you have this background node at the start, setting the resolution, it should all upscale pretty nicely. And if it doesn't upscale for any reason, all you have to do is just get a transform node and size it up until it like fits the whole square. So I'm kind of sitting here like, man, what else could I add to the background? Like, man, I went over light wraps. I went over, wait. Oh, I didn't go over light wrap. Let's say I want to add an explosion in the background and I want a nice light wrap to be on the hands. Now, there are some nodes to do this really easily. Now, obviously, we're going to need a explosion. So I'm going to get an overlay and just have that. And since it's in 1080p and our source footage is 4K, we're going to upscale this to 4K using a resize node. Pretty simple. And now we're going to need to solo out just like the hands and like the foreground. So we could just use the depth map again, or we could use Magic Mask. Let's give Magic Mask a try. You know, it's been a minute for that. Actually, you know, I'm going to use depth map again. All right, so I'm going to use depth map again and just like turn off all these settings. There you go. Make it like that. There you go. I'm going to get a matte control, plug our source footage into that, get our depth map, plug that into ray input again, garbage matte, luminance, invert. All right, now we have our hand light. Okay, now we're going to get our explosion. All right, drag it down to this gray dot right here. It'll automatically make a merge node. Press 2 to preview. Now it's in the front. If you want to make it go in the back, press Control T. And then we can get a transform node in our explosion layer, size it up, and do whatever we want to that. And then we can get another merge and put that top of our footage like that. All right, and for organizational purposes, I'm going to highlight these two, press Control G, and make that mask. Okay, so now we have the explosion in the background, our hands in the foreground, and it kind of does look a little bit weird. So I'm going to go to the depth map and just make some changes on this, just so it looks a bit more refined. There you go. And now for the light wrap. Now there are two main light wrap nodes that I love using. There is JWLightWrap, and then there is EKLightWrap. So there's EKLightWrap EX or any of these other EKLightWraps. Let's go over JWLightWrap first. So basically what you do, you take your already masked out layer, plug that into the yellow input, and then we take the background and plug that into the green input. This should automatically make a light wrap, but I actually inputted it in wrong, so I'm going to swap them around with Control T. And there you go. Now we have a nice light wrap. And if you download the Clout pack, you should automatically have some settings preset for you. This is just what looks best. Most time I'm using it for anime, but you can change these settings around. And there you go. So before and after. And if I want it to be more pronounced, I get a brightness and contrast node afterwards, and I can just brighten it up like that. Now there is EKLightWrap. EKLightWrap will pretty much replace your merge node. So I'm going to take this away, replace it with EKLightWrap, and plug in the overlay. The default settings do a really good job already. So the overall blend will just change like the transparency of the foreground. Bleed colors will change the colors so it fits more for what's in the background. And then there's the amount slider, which will blend the background with the foreground. And then there's a luminance threshold, and all this kind of just controls what the light wrap looks like. So you can just play around with these settings and see what looks best for you. There's even directional light position. So not gonna lie, EKLightWrap is the winner here. Just look at that. Now we have a nice explosion in the background. And by the way, this is all procedurally generated, meaning if I take my transform node and I move this explosion around, the light is reacting with what's in the background. So I can just make this super huge, for example, right? I can make this super huge, play the footage, and now I have my footage looking like this with the explosion in the background. I always recommend having some sort of overlay pack on you, because if you use overlays, you can composite them into the footage like this using a light wrap or some sort of thing. So I can switch out this explosion with whatever I want. So let's say I want a, let's see, overlays. Let's get the fluid particle overlay, right? And it looks like this. I'm going to just take this overlay, replace it with that. And right now it looks like nothing. I think it's just because it needs to be resized. So let me trim it down and take out these nodes. Yeah, I'm just going to resize it like that. I'm going to change EKLightWrap and turn down the amount slider. Okay, and wait for that to load. All right, and we switched over the overlay, and even that looks good too. Like, voila. Put an overlay on it, composite it in there, and all of a sudden you have some nice looking masterpiece. Now, since you're on Davinci Resolve, you can just make your own overlays. Like, you're not restricted to whatever you download on the internet. Your imagination is pretty much the only thing limiting you here on VFX. I'm just here to teach you the basics. All right, so we're pretty much done here. I'm going to do a quick before and after. Let me drag this in here. So we went from this to this in hopefully like 40 or 30 minutes, depending on how long the video is. Make sure you guys join the Discord server, download all the plugins and stuff, and really, really don't be scared of the Fusion page, okay? Please go into it, make some amazing anime edits. My name is CloutVFX, and see you next time.